Everything was dark at first. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think clearly. Then slowly, his eyes opened. Blinking against a soft blue light above him, the ceiling looked like glass, glowing gently, covered in strange symbols that moved like water. He tried to lift his arm, but his body felt weak, like it had been sleeping for a long, long time. Where was he? He turned his head to the side, and that's when he saw her. A girl, not a girl, something else. Her skin was smooth and pale blue, almost shining under the soft lights. Her hair flowed like silver threads, floating as if the air itself was lighter. Her eyes, large and glowing, stared at him with curiosity. Like she had never seen a human before, she leaned closer, tilting her head, and whispered something in a soft voice. He couldn't understand her words, but her tone was gentle, almost playful. He tried to speak, but only a dry breath came out of his mouth. She noticed and quickly moved away, returning moments later with a strange glass tube. She placed it near his lips, and a cool liquid touched his tongue. The drink was sweet and warm, and as it slid down his throat, he felt life return to his limbs. The girl smiled when he swallowed, then carefully touched his forehead with 2 fingers. He flinched at first, but she didn't hurt him. Instead, her touch felt calming, like electricity running through his skin. What was she doing? He slowly sat up, groaning as his muscles protested. He looked around the room. Walls made of smooth metal, soft lights blinking on panels, and no windows. It wasn't Earth, that much he knew. There were no doctors, no nurses, no familiar voices. Just this alien girl who kept watching him with wide, curious eyes. She said something again, then laughed, placing her hand on her chest and pointing at him. Was she telling him her name? Or asking his? He pointed to himself and said, "Daniel." She repeated it slowly. Daniel, smiling like it was a new word to her. Then she pointed to herself and said, "Alira, Alira." So that was her name. They stared at each other. For a moment, the silence filled with questions neither could answer. He tried to stand, but his legs were still weak. Alira reached out, gently helping him up. She was strong for someone who looked so delicate. She supported him as he leaned against the wall. Breathing hard, he noticed then a door across the room. Smooth and sealed. No handle, no switch. Was he locked in? Was she keeping him here? Or was she also a prisoner? He walked slowly around the room, touching the walls, looking for clues. Alira followed closely, always watching, but not stopping him. There was no bed, just the soft table he had woken up on. No camera, no sound of machines, just the soft hum of energy flowing through the walls. He turned to her and asked, "Where am I?" Of course, she didn't understand. She just blinked and tilted her head again. Like she was trying to read his mind, he sighed and sat down again, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing on him. Alira sat beside him, holding something in her hand, a small glowing crystal. She placed it between them and tapped it twice. Images flickered in the air above the crystal planets. Stars, shapes of alien creatures. Then, an image of Earth appeared, spinning slowly in space. His heart skipped a beat. She knew where Earth was. She knew who he was, or at least what he was. He pointed at the image. "Home," he said. She looked at him, then at the image, and repeated, "Home." Her voice was soft, almost sad. Why was she showing him this? Was she trying to help him, or was it a warning? And why had he woken up in this place at all? Daniel looked at her again, this strange, beautiful being who seemed more curious than dangerous. She didn't seem like a soldier, or a doctor, or a scientist. She seemed alone. The thought chilled him, because if she was alone, then where were the others? And why did he feel like someone or something was watching them even now? He lay back slowly, eyes on the ceiling, heart beating faster. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt like the calm before a storm, and deep down, Daniel knew his real questions were just beginning. The light in the room dimmed slowly. Like the walls could feel he needed rest. Daniel sat on the edge of the soft table, staring at the alien girl sitting across from him. She hadn't left his side since he woke up, and though her face remained calm, her eyes stayed fixed on him, never blinking for too long. He didn't know if it was day or night, but his body felt like it had slept for weeks. Even now, his legs were weak, but he forced himself to stand again. He limped to the wall, where the spinning image of Earth had disappeared. He touched the cold surface, hoping it would light up again, hoping for answers. Alira watched him closely, her fingers lightly tapping on the crystal again. But this time, no images came. She tilted her head and spoke softly, her words flowing like music, but they still made no sense to him. He gave a frustrated sigh and looked at her. "Can you understand me at all?" he said slowly, pointing to his mouth. Then to her, she blinked and stood up, slowly walking toward him. Her hands moved in the air, drawing shapes: triangle, circle, line. He watched in confusion as she drew the same shapes again, then pointed. To herself, it wasn't random, he realized. She was trying to teach him something. It's a kind of language, but not with words. He copied the shapes slowly, awkwardly, and she smiled with approval. Then she walked over to the far wall and pressed her hand against it. The wall shimmered like water, and, to his surprise, a section of it opened silently. Behind it was another room, smaller, darker, filled with strange objects. She looked at him and gestured to follow. He hesitated, his instincts warning him. But something about her expression made him step forward. Inside, the air felt cooler, and the walls were covered in soft lights like stars. She picked up a glowing cube and placed it in his hands. Immediately, the cube changed colors, pulsing gently. He didn't know what it meant, but she looked surprised, maybe even impressed. She reached out and touched his chest, then pointed to the cube, then to herself, and the cube again. It was clear now this thing reacted to him differently than it did to her. But why? What was it reading? Suddenly, a sharp beep echoed through the walls, and the lights above flickered. Alira froze, then quickly took the cube from his hands and placed it back where it came from. She grabbed his hand, her grip stronger than expected, and pulled him out of the room. The wall closed behind them just as it had opened, hiding whatever secrets were inside, back in the main room. The humming sound grew louder, and a faint red glow spread across the ceiling. Alira looked around nervously, her calm expression now replaced with something else: fear. Daniel tensed, his heart racing again. She turned to him and tapped her forehead, then pointed to him. Was she trying to say she trusted him, or asking him to trust her? Before he could guess, the wall behind them made a soft clicking sound, and part of it slid open. Alira's body went rigid, her hand tightening around his. Two figures stepped inside, tall and dressed in dark armor, faces covered with glass helmets. They spoke in a harsh, clicking language and raised a glowing device between them, pointing it directly at Daniel. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Alira stepped in front of him quickly, arms outstretched, shouting something loud and sharp. The two armored figures stopped, then lowered their arms. One of them replied to her, voice deeper, slower. Whatever they said made her flinch. Then they turned and left, the door closing behind them like they had never been there. Daniel exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. Alira turned toward him again, her eyes wide with something new: urgency. She walked to the panel he had seen earlier, the one she always kept closed. This time, she opened it and stepped aside, letting him see inside. It was a map, but not of Earth. Hundreds of stars, glowing lines, blinking dots, routes, maybe even paths of travel. She tapped one of the blinking points, and a soft hum began to rise from the walls again. Then she looked at him, deadly serious. now, and whispered one word, slowly and clearly: escape. Daniel didn't know where he was, who these armored figures were, or even who Alira really was. But now, more than ever, he felt it in his bones. He wasn't meant to stay here. And whatever this place was, it had just become dangerous, and she had just become his only chance to get out alive. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. If it was even night, the walls glowed faintly. Casting soft blue shadows around the room, he lay awake, eyes on the ceiling, his mind spinning with questions. Alira had gone silent after showing him the star. Map. She now sat on the floor in the corner, legs crossed, arms around her knees. Staring into nothing, something had changed. The way she looked at him now wasn't playful or curious. It was careful, protective, as if she knew more than she could say. He sat up quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. His fingers brushed against something small, cold metal. He pulled it from under his collar, a tiny chip barely bigger than a grain of rice. How long had that been there? He stood and walked over to Alira, holding the chip out. Her eyes narrowed when she saw it, and she quickly took it from his hand. She examined it closely, then crushed it between her fingers like dry glass. He jumped back in shock, but she just shook her head and whispered, "Watch her." Was it a tracker? A listening device? Daniel looked around the room again, but everything looked normal. To clean, to quiet. He needed to know more. He needed answers, not silence. While Alira rested again, Daniel moved toward the far wall. He had seen her open it before. Using her hand as a key, he slowly raised his own hand and placed it against the smooth surface. Nothing happened at first, but then the wall shimmered for a moment. Just like before, a soft click followed. The panel slid open, revealing the same blinking map, but this time, Daniel saw something different. There was a line of red dots leading from one corner to another. They weren't planets, they were tracking signals, and one of them was moving, getting closer to their current position. His stomach dropped. Someone was coming. He reached toward one of the side panels and touched it. It lit up, and strange symbols floated across the screen. He couldn't read them, but he could feel the meaning roots. Systems, danger zones. He reached for another button, just as a soft voice spoke behind him. Stop. He turned around. Alira was awake, and this time, her voice carried weight. She stepped forward, her eyes not playful anymore. She pressed another part of the wall, and a hidden drawer slid open. Inside was something unexpected: clothing. Not alien robes or armor, but human clothes. His size, his style, even the tags were from Earth brands. He pulled one of the shirts out, his hands shaking. "How do you have this?" he asked, voice hoarse. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached in and pulled out a small device, a black bandant, handed it to him. She motioned for him to place it behind his ear. He hesitated, then obeyed the moment it clicked into place. His ears rang, and then clarity. A voice inside his head spoke in English. Translation system activated. He looked at her in shock, and she nodded. "I couldn't speak to you before," she said, slowly, carefully, "but I can now." Daniel felt the room spin. His heart pounded in his chest. "How do you have my things?" he asked, stepping closer. "What is this place?" She lowered her gaze. "This is not a home," she said. "It's a collection ground." He didn't understand at first. She took a breath, then pointed to the map. "Many like you," she said, "taken from different places, brought here, tested." He felt cold. Tested for what? Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Survival?" she whispered, and reaction. She moved to the drawer and pulled out a small container. Inside were other objects, child's toy. A cracked phone, a worn-out Earth flag patch. He stepped back, horrified. This wasn't an accident. They had been collecting humans, or at least their belongings, and he was just the latest one. Why am I still alive? He asked, voice shaking. She looked at him with quiet eyes. Because I stopped them, she said. Because I made a promise. The floor beneath them vibrated suddenly, and the lights turned red again. She looked up, then grabbed his hand. They found the signal, she said. We have to go now, before he could ask anything else. The wall on the far side opened this time, revealing a dark tunnel lit by small red lights. She pulled him inside, the door sliding shut behind them. Her grip was tight and her pace fast. There was no more time for questions, only escape. The tunnel was narrow and cold, lit only by red emergency lights that pulsed slowly. Like a heartbeat, Daniel ran behind Alira. His bare feet slapping against the smooth floor, every breath sharp in his throat. She didn't speak, didn't look back. Only held his hand tighter as they weaved through shadowed corridors and opened doors that vanished behind them like they were never there. Something was wrong with the air. It tasted metallic and thick. Daniel could feel pressure in his chest. Like they were underground or inside, something that was waking up every few seconds. The walls hummed louder, and somewhere far behind them, he could hear metal crashing. He wasn't sure if it was doors slamming or something breaking free. Alira finally stopped near a corner and placed her hand on the wall. It slid open into a small room filled with old storage crates, cables, and dust. She pulled him inside and sealed the entrance behind them. The sound of the hallway disappeared. Instantly, replaced by a heavy silence, Daniel leaned against one of the crates, trying to catch his breath. "What is this place?" he asked, still breathing hard. Alira moved quickly, pushing open one of the crates and pulling out a small device shaped like a sphere. She activated it, and a soft blue shield shimmered around them like a bubble. "Safer now," she said, kneeling beside the crate. Daniel looked around the room, noticing strange markings on the walls, burn marks, claw scratches, and something darker smeared across the floor. This room hadn't just been abandoned, it had been attacked. Alira pulled out another object. This time a tablet that lit up with a soft green glow. She tapped on it, showing him a series of short videos. Most of them were fuzzy. Shaky footage from cameras, hallways, cages, experiments. He saw humans trapped behind energy walls, some crying, some shouting, others just still. Daniel's hands began to shake as he looked away. "This can't be real," he whispered. Alira stood slowly and met his eyes. "This place uses silence," she said. "But the truth is loud if you look." He stared at her, realizing she hadn't just saved him. She had turned against her own people. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice low. Alira hesitated, then pulled out something from her sleeve, tiny worn piece of paper, folded many times. She handed it to him carefully, like it was fragile. Daniel opened it and his heart stopped. It was a photo, faded and bent but clear, two people standing in front of a ship on Earth, smiling. One of them was him, and the other? A woman, someone he barely remembered from years ago. "Where did you get this?" he asked, stunned. Alira looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "She was the first one they brought here." Daniel's legs nearly gave out. He grabbed the edge of the crate and tried to process what she said. His sister, his lost sister. The one who vanished during the early space program, test flights. Everyone thought she was dead, but she had ended up here on this hidden world. "In this nightmare, I tried to save her," Alira said, her eyes shining with something heavy. "But I failed." Daniel felt his throat close. All the fear inside him began to burn into something else, rage. "What happened to her?" Alira didn't answer, just looked away. Daniel stepped forward, grabbing her arm gently. "Is she alive?" Alira met his eyes, and slowly, painfully, shook her head. He wanted to scream, to hit something, to run, but the only thing he could do now was survive, for her and for all the others he saw in those terrible recordings. The walls vibrated again, stronger this time, and the lights flickered. Alira moved fast, grabbing another device from the crate, a small black badge, and clipped it onto his chest. "Energy mask," she said. "They won't detect you now." Daniel didn't know if that was true, but he trusted her. He had no choice outside the room. Loud thuds echoed again, much closer this time. Alira dimmed the lights and pulled him close. Her voice firm. "They're hunting." Daniel looked into her glowing eyes. He wasn't sure who was coming or how long they had. But one thing was clear: whatever this place truly was, he was never supposed to wake up in it, and now that he had, they would do everything to stop him from leaving alive. The moment they stepped out of the storage room, the silence shattered. A siren began to wail deep inside the facility, rising and falling like a scream trapped in metal. Red lights flashed along the hallway ceiling, and the air grew warmer, thicker, pulsing with energy. Daniel didn't ask questions anymore. He ran, hand in hand with Alira, trusting her without hesitation. She moved fast. Too fast for someone her size. Her steps were light but sharp, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Daniel barely kept up, the floor beneath them vibrating as something massive stirred far below. They passed broken doors, shattered glass, rooms with overturned tables, and dark stains on the walls. Some chambers were filled with strange machines, others with cage, some empty, some not. He caught glimpses through the glass, things not human, things that shouldn't exist, creatures breathing heavily, their eyes glowing in the dark, watching him, tracking him. Then the hallway opened up into a giant chamber, a docking bay filled with broken ships, supply crates, and half-assembled tech. This place hadn't been used in a long time, but it was their only chance. Alira stopped at a control panel and began typing quickly, her fingers a blur. Daniel looked around, trying to make sense of it all. He saw a small ship in the corner, dust-covered but intact. Its doors were open, lights still blinking on the side, like it had been waiting. The ground shook again, louder this time, and from the far end of the chamber came a sound like tearing metal. A door exploded outward, and a massive shadow stepped through, tall, armored, its face hidden behind a silver mask. It didn't walk, it glided like gravity had no hold on. Behind it came others, smaller but just as terrifying, all with weapons glowing in their hands. "Alira," Daniel called, panic rising in his throat. She didn't look up, just shouted, 30 seconds. Daniel reached down and grabbed a metal rod from one of the nearby crates. He wasn't a soldier, but he wasn't going to go down without fighting. The creatures fanned out, searching, sniffing the air like wolves. But then one of them paused, head tilting, its eyes locking straight onto Daniel. He froze, heart pounding. The creature raised its weapon, and then something flew past Daniel's head and struck the creature in the chest. A small disc that exploded into a cloud of silver dust. The creature screamed and fell, its body twisting as the dust burned into it. Alira stood beside him now, another disc in her hand. "Run," she said, her voice hard as steel. Together, they raced across the floor toward the waiting ship. The attackers gave chase, but the silver dust slowed them, burned them, forced them back. One of the creatures jumped forward, reaching for Daniel's leg. He kicked it hard, and it crashed into a pile of crates with a screech. They reached the ship, and Alira slammed the door shut behind them. She jumped into the pilot seat, the controls lighting up with symbols Daniel couldn't read. He sat beside her, strapping himself in as the engine roared to life. The ship vibrated violently, its core spinning up through the small window. Daniel could see the masked figure watching from the shadows. It didn't move, didn't speak, just raised one hand slowly. Daniel felt cold, like that gesture meant something final. The ship lifted off the floor, engines burning hot. Alira pushed the throttle. and the docking bay blurred beneath them. They shot forward through a tunnel of steel, lights flying past, alarms blaring behind them. Then suddenly open sky. The darkness of space swallowed them whole. Stars scattered in every direction. And far below, the strange planet shrank quickly. Daniel's chest finally relaxed, the pressure fading as gravity loosened its grip. He looked at Alira, who was staring straight ahead. Hands still on the controls, they were out. But the danger wasn't over. He could feel it. The look on her face wasn't one of relief, it was dread. She had gotten them this far, but something still haunted her. And Daniel knew, without asking, this escape had come with a cost. The stars outside the window looked peaceful, but inside the ship, the silence was heavy. Daniel sat strapped into the seat, still shaking from the escape. His heartbeat was slowing, but his mind couldn't rest. They had left something behind, something terrible, something alive. Alira didn't speak, her hands still on the control panel. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. She didn't blink, didn't move. Just stared ahead like something worse was waiting in front of them, not behind. Daniel finally unstrapped and moved closer, his voice low. "You knew they'd follow us," he said. She didn't answer right away, then slowly nodded. "They always follow," she whispered. He sat across from her and leaned forward. "Tell me the truth," he said. "All of it." Alira closed her eyes, as if choosing the right memory hurt. She reached under her seat and pulled out a small, cube-shaped device. She placed it on the table between them and tapped it twice. A soft hum filled the room, and then an image. Appeared a recording, years old, of a young human woman walking through a metallic hallway. Her face familiar, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It was her, his sister, smiling, alive. Holding a scanner in her hand as she moved through the alien structure, she wasn't afraid. She looked hopeful. She was the first, Alira. Said quietly, the first one they brought in with permission. Daniel frowned. "Permission?" Alira nodded. "Your people wanted peace. They sent explorers, scientists." Hoping to make contact, his hands trembled as the video continued. "But the ones who answered weren't peaceful," she said. "They wanted to learn what made you different." Daniel looked at her. "Different how?" She hesitated, then tapped her own chest. "You resist the void," she said. "Your kind doesn't break under the same pressures." The recording changed, showing other humans in testing rooms. Some cried, some screamed, others just stared. He couldn't watch anymore. He turned away, but the images burned into his mind. "She tried to stop them," Alira said, "but they didn't listen. They didn't care. She fought." Daniel's eyes welled up. "Did she die there?" Alira slowly shook her head. "She died because she protected someone." Daniel stared at her, trying to understand. Then Alira reached up to her collar and pulled something free, a tiny silver chain with a half-melted badge. He leaned closer, his breath catching again. It was his. Sister's ID Earth Fleet symbol still visible beneath the burn marks. "She gave it to me," Alira said softly, "before they came for her." Daniel stood up, his body shaking with rage. "They killed her." Alira didn't look away. "No," she said, "she chose to die. They offered her a place among them. She refused." The silence pressed down on them like gravity. He felt sick, broken, and yet, part of him lit up. She had stayed. Strong until the end, she had fought. He looked at Alira, finally seeing her not just as an alien, but as someone who had been there, who had risked everything to help a stranger. "Why me?" he asked. "Why save me?" Alira looked at him with tired eyes. "Because I failed her," she said. "But I will not fail you. I made a promise." Daniel didn't know what to say. He sat beside her in silence, the stars slowly passing outside the window. But before they could speak again, a loud beep echoed from the control panel. Alira turned sharply, eyes narrowing. She touched the screen, a signal, pulsing, steady. Daniel leaned over her shoulder. "What is it?" She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered the one word he didn't want to hear. Tracking. They were being followed. The ship wasn't fast enough. Not for long. They had escaped the cage, but the hunters were still coming. Alira stood up, walked to the side of the cockpit, and opened a small compartment. Inside were 2 suits, one black, one dark blue, both sleek and tight. She tossed one to Daniel. "If they catch us," she said, "there won't be a second chance." Daniel took the suit and nodded. He had no more fear left, only fire. He didn't know where they were going or what waited for them in the next system. But he knew this: he would not run forever. Not now, not after everything she had shown him. It was time to turn and face the storm. The stars no longer looked peaceful. They spun like silent warnings across the ship's window. Alira moved quickly through the cockpit, checking systems, scanning for exits. Daniel stood behind her, now wearing the black suit she gave him. It fit too well, like it had been made for him. Maybe it had. The ship jolted suddenly. The lights flickering from deep space. Something massive had arrived. A vessel so large it made the stars behind it vanish. No sound, no warning, just its presence. Daniel stared in shock. It wasn't a ship, it was a fortress. Floating through the dark like a god without a face. Alira's hands trembled as she brought up the star map. "There's one path," she said. "One blind spot, but it will close fast." Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "We take it." Alira looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled, not with joy, but with something like faith. "I hoped you would say that," she whispered. She turned the ship sharply. Engines roaring louder than before. Warning lights lit up across the dashboard behind them. Small hunter crafts detached from the fortress, chasing like wolves in a silent pack. Each one carried the same glowing weapons. The same intent: capture or destroy. Daniel sat beside her, holding on to the straps, heart steady. "I need to do something," he said. "Not just sit here." Alira glanced at him, then pointed toward a second console. "Control the shields." Red panel, left side. He rushed over, placing his hand on the panel. It lit up, and his heartbeat synced with the ship's rhythm. He adjusted the energy flow, shifting power from lights to engines. Then 2 shields as blasts hit them from behind. The ship trembled, but didn't slow. They flew through a narrow asteroid field, razor-thin space on either side. One wrong turn, and they'd be torn apart. But Alira didn't flinch. She knew this path like she had seen it in her dreams. Daniel kept the shields moving, blocking every hit. But the enemy was getting closer. One blast hit their left wing systems. Flickered, a fire broke out in the rear compartment. Alira shouted, "Hold the course." Daniel ran back, grabbed a small extinguisher, and put the flames out. Smoke burned his lungs, but he didn't stop. The ship lurched again as one of the hunter crafts slammed into their side. Alira twisted the controls, spinning the ship around, and released a burst of raw energy. The craft behind them exploded in silence, torn apart by the blast. 2 more followed, dodging wreckage, closing in. Daniel looked at the shrinking path ahead, a narrow rip in space itself. The blind spot she had mentioned. They had seconds. Alira shouted. Now, Daniel redirected all power to the engines. The ship launched forward like a bullet, slipping through the rip just as the enemy fired again. The explosion bloomed behind them. Too late. Inside the ship, everything went quiet. The stars returned, blinking softly. The enemy was gone, the fortress no longer chasing. Daniel fell into the co-pilot chair, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his neck. Alira leaned back, eyes closed, hands still on the controls. They had made it. The ship floated now, silent, drifting in peaceful space far from the hunter's reach. He looked at her, and she at him. No words were needed. He moved toward the back and opened the supply case. Inside was a single sealed box with a red Earth logo. He opened it slowly. Food. Packs, water, 2 folded Earth flags. He handed one to her. She touched it gently, then placed it across her lap. Daniel sat beside her and looked out the window. There was no going back. Earth didn't know what was out here. Didn't know what had been done, but they did. A human and an alien girl, both survivors. Both broken, both changed. He reached for the controls and turned on the long-range beacon. "Signal Earth," he said. Alira nodded. Let them hear the truth. The ship drifted slowly into the deep, carrying more than just 2 lives. It carried proof, memory, warning, and hope. Hope that someone, somewhere, was listening.